In the winter of 1891, the House of Representatives passed a voting rights bill to protect the rights of African Americans to vote. Very simple proposition. It was filibustered in the Senate and it died. And what we saw was 75 years of constraint on the rights of African Americans to vote. I know about that because I grew up in Virginia. I saw it. I saw it. I saw the effect that it had on my black friends and neighbors. There's an old hymn we used to sing in St. Paul's Church over in Alexandria, a Protestant hymn. Once to every man and nation comes a moment to decide. That is the moment that we're at right now. The point I want to make is that that vote in 1891 changed American history for the worse for 75 years. A few people changed American history for the worst in 1891. I don't want to see us make that mistake again. And I come at this a little differently than my colleagues. Sorry, Chuck. I don't know what the effect will be of ensuring a broader franchise in this country politically. Tim Kaine will tell you that in Virginia they expanded the franchise last year and they just elected a Republican governor for the first time in about a dozen years. So this isn't about electing Democrats or not electing Republicans. This is about preserving democracy with a small d. I have been very reluctant since being here to talk at all about changing the filibuster. And if we were here today talking about a policy issue, I wouldn't be at this podium. But we're not talking about a policy issue. We're talking about a structural issue. We're talking about how our system works. And the problem is, if it's corrupted, if it's compromised, then the voters can't change things even if they want to. And a lot of my colleagues and myself are worried about, okay, if you change the filibuster, what happens the next time when somebody else is in the majority? Well, the answer is if they're in the majority and they overreach, as long as the system is working, the voters can throw them out the next time. There's always an election in 2 years. But if the election itself is compromised, then that check, that essential democratic check, and that is the essential check in the Constitution, is regular elections. If that check is compromised, the system doesn't work. Finally, I find it a rich irony that we are here discussing and debating the principle of bipartisanship. I got a text from one of my colleagues in the Republican Party about the principle of bipartisanship, which I believe in. I believe that we should work whenever possible on a bipartisan basis, just as we did on the infrastructure bill. But it's ironic in the extreme to enshrine the principle of bipartisanship here in the Senate to the extent that we can't repair damage done to the democracy by 100% partisan legislatures around the state. In other words, if bipartisanship is a principle here in Washington, it ought to be in Atlanta and Concord and the other state capitals in the country, in Austin. So I'm all for bipartisanship, but in this situation, that doesn't seem to be in the offing. We've been working on this for a year. And we've had virtually no reach out, no discussion of dealing with these issues that are in the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So I'll return to the beginning. I believe that the vote taken this week is the most important vote that I will ever take in my life. Not because of any issue, but because of the structure of democracy itself. Democracy is fragile. It's unusual. The great British historian Arnold Toynbee said, "Civilizations commit suicide, they're not murdered." I don't want to see that happen in the United States of America.
Thank you, Wayne.